You want me to buy a subscription to the Saturday Evening Post?
No.
Not a word, not a word, not a word now. Quiet.
Hey, Doc, this is it.
Never mind that now. Never mind that.
Why, that's me. Look at me. I'm an old man.
When Christopher Lloyd first opened the script of Back to the Future, he was not excited at all. In fact, he hated it bitterly. For a moment, Lloyd considered tossing it aside, and with just one shake of the head, the legendary Doc Brown might never have existed. But what made him change his mind at the very last minute? And why today, in his twilight years, does he see this as the smartest decision of his life at 86? Lloyd has finally broken his silence, revealing shocking truths from risky decisions that nearly destroyed the project to behind-the-scenes secrets never before revealed, all of which contributed to making Back to the Future an immortal monument in the world of science fiction cinema. So what exactly happened behind the scenes? Let's uncover the explosive secrets of this legendary trilogy. Back to the Future is a masterpiece of sci-fi blended with comedy where Marty McFly, a daring, energetic 17-year-old, is accidentally transported back to 1955 in the DeLorean time machine. Invented by his eccentric scientist friend, Dr. Emmett Brown. There, Marty faces the ultimate challenge. He has inadvertently prevented the fateful meeting of his parents, threatening his very existence in the future. To save himself and his family, Marty must cleverly help George McFly regain his confidence, ensure Lorraine falls in love with him, and at the same time find a way back to the future before everything collapses into chaos beyond repair. Every second in the past becomes unbearably tense, each action carrying irreversible consequences, as if the audience is walking on the razor's edge of time. After the explosive success of Part 1 Back to the Future, immediately continued with 2 sequels pushing Marty McFly and Doc Brown's adventure to even greater heights. In Part 2, Marty and Doc travel to 2015 to prevent Marty's son from falling into trouble, but everything spirals out of control when a wealthy Biff Tannen exploits the time machine to create a dark alternate timeline. In this world, Hill Valley is transformed into a chaotic wasteland. George McFly is doomed to failure, and Doc must find a way to save the future from catastrophe. Part 3 takes the story further back to 1885, turning the adventure into a Wild West tale full of action and emotion. When Doc Brown becomes stranded in the cowboy era and faces life or death dangers, Marty must rescue his friend, confront Biff's ancestor, and at the same time protect the time machine from being destroyed. The trilogy delivers a complete ending, yet leaves behind unforgettable echoes in the hearts of viewers. Even though it became a box office phenomenon with nearly $1 billion worldwide revenue, an achievement that commanded Hollywood's respect, Back to the Future initially struggled just to get Christopher Lloyd on board. Recently, Christopher Lloyd, the mad scientist Doc Brown, recalled that at first he had no interest in Back to the Future. When he first received the script, he flipped through a few pages, frowned, and tossed it straight into the trash. For Lloyd, at that time, the script held nothing exciting, nothing strong enough to pull him away from his desire to return to New York, where the stage was his true home. He once admitted, "I was tired of films, I just wanted to go back to the theatre." And yet, that very draft, seemingly destined to be forgotten, became the greatest turning point of his career. Even after agreeing, Lloyd remained doubtful. He confessed in many interviews that he was not sure what I was doing during the first days of filming. On paper, Doc Brown was a brilliant eccentric. But how could he explode on screen without becoming a complete farce? Lloyd had no answer. At the start, the role of Marty McFly wasn't Michael J. Fox's. It was given to Eric Stoltz, a talented young actor. But problems surfaced quickly. Stoltz's overly serious acting clashed completely with the film's humorous, adventurous tone. After weeks of shooting, director Robert Zemeckis and producer Bob Gale had to make a life-or-death decision: replace Stoltz with Michael J. Fox. It was a bombshell. Entire scenes had to be reshot, costing millions more and exhausting the crew. Christopher Lloyd, who had already acted alongside Stoltz, worried how he could redo everything. But when Fox arrived, everything changed instantly. His energy, wit, and charm breathed new life into the set. Fox and Lloyd soon became an iconic duo. Fox's charm and humour blended perfectly with Doc Brown's manic yet heartfelt eccentricity. On screen, they became an unofficial father-son pair, a quirky mentor, and his stubborn protege, their chemistry so natural the audience was completely swept away. But this golden synergy didn't come easily. At the time, Fox was still the star of Family Ties, meaning he shot the sitcom during the day, then rushed overnight to film Back to the Future. The cast and crew worked around the clock, their schedules suffocating, but everyone knew this was the price for a masterpiece. Lloyd also poured his heart into Doc Brown. He didn't want the character to be just a comic oddball, but a brilliant scientist full of compassion, both mad and deeply human. The smallest details, his twitching eyes, the booming cry of Great Scott, the dramatic spins, were all Lloyd's inventions to make Doc unforgettable. More importantly, he portrayed Doc as a mentor, constantly worrying about Marty, warning him of the dangers of time travel. That depth helped Doc Brown rise beyond the cliché of the crazy eccentric, becoming an immortal character in the minds of audiences. The filmmaking process was no less tense than the story itself. Millions were poured into reshoots, and visual effects of the time were incredibly costly. The scene of the DeLorean roaring away in flames at 88 miles now iconic was then a technical nightmare for the effects team. Yet every effort crystallized into a masterpiece large enough to open the door for a long-running adventure. When it came time for Part 2 and Part 3, Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale played an even bolder card, filming both simultaneously. For nearly a year, the crew battled through relentless schedules and new motion control techniques so Fox could appear alongside himself on screen. The timing and staging of such scenes had to be flawless. But it wasn't only about technical wizardry. They had to tell a meaningful story spanning both films. Fans had fallen deeply in love with the first Back to the Future, so the pressure on the sequels was immense. They had to meet sky-high expectations while expanding Marty and Doc's world to a whole new level. The challenge was enormous. Keep the sharp humour that defined the first film while weaving in grander ideas like how the smallest choices today can reshape the future. The settings also changed drastically. Part 2 took audiences to 2015 with hoverboards and self-lacing shoes, while Part 3 dragged them back to the dusty Wild West of 1885. This meant massive sets and meticulously detailed costumes had to be built, recreating each era with precision. The risks were huge, but the rewards matched. Back to the Future. Part 2 grossed over $331 million, and Part 3 added another $244 million, cementing the franchise's colossal appeal. More than that, Zemeckis and Gale's decision to film 2 installments back-to-back proved daring, yet brilliant, showing that narrative continuity could sustain the heat across multiple films. Behind the glory, however, lay mountains of difficulty. Industrial Light and Magic had to invent VistaGlide, a groundbreaking technique at the time to create seamless scenes where Marty met his future self. The trilogy didn't just tell a story, it expanded the very frontiers of cinematic technology. The plot also became increasingly complex, with alternate timelines and surprising chain reactions of consequences, yet still maintained a playful rhythm that kept audiences from ever feeling burdened. The characters developed in parallel. Michael J. Fox's Marty McFly retained his innocence and relatability, but gradually matured, learning that responsibility and personal choices could change everything. Meanwhile, Christopher Lloyd's Doc Brown underwent a striking transformation from a mad but cautious scientist in Part 2 to an emotional man in Part 3 when he fell in love with Clara Clayton. For the first time, audiences saw Doc not just as a brilliant mind, but as a heart capable of emotion. Despite facing immense time pressure, the cast and crew of Back to the Future worked tirelessly to keep everything on schedule. At the heart of the film, Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown injected explosive energy right from the very first part. He was the eccentric scientist with wild white hair, constantly bursting with crazy ideas, exploding with excitement at the dream of time travel. But as the trilogy unfolded, Doc was no longer just an obsessed experimenter. In Part 2, Lloyd transformed him into a man torn apart, forced to confront the painful question: how far should one interfere in the flow of history? And then, Part 3 opened up an unexpected turning point. Doc discovered love. His feelings for Clara Clayton made him more than just an eccentric scientific genius. He became a complete human being, at once vulnerable and courageous. It was Lloyd who turned Doc Brown into a character of rare depth, making audiences not only laugh at his madness, but also feel deeply moved by his humanity. Thus, the trilogy became a classic, funny, thrilling, and brimming with emotion. It also completely changed the way audiences thought about time travel, introducing the concept of parallel timelines, an idea that has since become foundational in countless modern films and series. Phrases like "Great Scott" from Doc escaped the screen and etched themselves into popular culture. Beyond Lloyd's revelations about his role, the film also carried many bizarre troubles that fans could never have imagined. First, the script of Back to the Future was rejected as many as 44 times. Studios at the time favoured raunchy comedies for adult audiences, while the story of a boy accidentally travelling back to meet his teenage parents was considered too innocent, too family-friendly. In fact, when the script was sent to Disney, the company immediately rejected it, claiming the subplot of Marty's mother falling for her own son in the past was too incestuous. Even after Universal gave the green light, trouble still brewed. Executive Sid Sheinberg pressured the team to change the title Back to the Future to Spaceman from Pluto. His reasoning was that the existing title was too sci-fi and would be hard to sell. Fortunately, Zemeckis and Gale firmly refused, and if not perhaps today, no one would remember a spaceman at all. But the most shocking scandal was the story of Crispin Glover, who played George McFly, Marty's father. After the first film, Glover clashed with the production team over salary and character development. He did not return for the sequel, but the producers still used old footage and even a body double with a prosthetic mask to recreate his image. This infuriated Glover, who sued Universal for violating his image rights. It became one of Hollywood's landmark lawsuits, setting legal precedent for actors' control over their likeness. And that wasn't all. Even the film's icon, the DeLorean, caused endless headaches. In reality, it was an unstable car with a weak engine and constant breakdowns. Its gull-winged doors often trapped Michael J. Fox's hands, and he even hit his head while rushing in and out. Behind its glamorous on-screen appearance, the crew had to struggle endlessly to make the time machine work smoothly. Yet the film became a box office sensation for sci-fi fans the moment it hit theatres. Its influence reached far beyond the cinema. The gleaming DeLorean is now an immortal symbol, one of the most famous cars in film history. Fans even celebrate October 21st, the date Marty travelled to 2015, as Back to the Future Day around the world. Decades later, audiences still passionately rewatch the trilogy, still debate its philosophical themes hidden in wit, and still praise its timelessly clever storytelling, just like the legendary DeLorean itself. At 86, when asked if he loved the film, Lloyd answered without hesitation, "Yes, and very much so." He always admits he feels incredibly lucky to be part of this legacy because every day fans approach him to say, "You made my childhood." For Lloyd, that is a reward far more precious than any cinematic award. And it doesn't stop at pride. Lloyd has even said he's willing to return if there were a worthy script. He made it clear, as long as Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale, the two minds behind the series, come up with a truly outstanding idea, he would immediately put on the white lab coat and shout, "Great Scott, one more time." This shows that Lloyd's love for Back to the Future has never faded, still burning after nearly 4 decades. What binds him most deeply is his special relationship with Michael J. Fox. Lloyd always speaks of Fox with affection, viewing the chemistry between Marty and Doc as the perfect puzzle piece that created the film's magic. The feeling of becoming Doc Brown with wild hair, glowing eyes, and explosive madness brought him a rare joy, as if freeing a part of himself he had never shown before. If he had to choose his favourite instalment, Lloyd does not hesitate to mention Back to the Future Part 3. He adored the adventurous Wild West setting, enjoyed the spinning dance sequences, and especially treasured Doc's romance with Clara, the moment his character first revealed the softness of his heart. Clearly, from once coldly rejecting it, Christopher Lloyd has turned Back to the Future into the eternal pride of his life. A strange and thrilling journey, not unlike the very story of time travel he helped bring to life. Thanks to Back to the Future, Christopher Lloyd carved his name into cinema history, becoming an immortal icon as the eccentric genius Doc Brown. But his journey did not end there. Lloyd went on to conquer new heights and prove himself an endlessly versatile actor. And to understand the creative fire that fueled such a legend, we must travel back in time to the colourful childhood and unusual beginnings of Christopher Lloyd. Christopher Lloyd was born on October 22, 1938, in Stamford, Connecticut, into a well-off and influential family. His mother, Ruth, was a talented singer and the sister of Roger Lapham, who would later become the mayor of San Francisco. His father, Samuel, was a successful lawyer, while his grandfather, Lewis Henry Lapham, was one of the founders of the Texaco Oil Company, bringing prosperity to the entire family. Lloyd grew up in Westport, a small town that was booming into a creative hub attracting countless artists from New York. In that atmosphere, the love for art was planted deep into the boy's veins. His family also had deep roots. One of Lloyd's ancestors, John Howland, was a passenger on the legendary Mayflower, signing the Mayflower Compact that gave birth to America. The flame of theatre in Lloyd ignited at the age of 14. In the summer of 1952, instead of playing around, he threw himself into apprenticeships at theatres in Hyannis, Massachusetts and Mount Kisco, New York. The work was far from glamorous, carrying heavy loads, preparing costumes, managing backstage, sometimes working 16 hours a day for little pay. Yet Lloyd loved every moment. The turning point came at 15 when he was given the role of stage manager in Our Town. That play became a great push, making Lloyd even more determined to pursue acting, and by 19, he took a bold leap, moving permanently to New York to study at the Playhouse Theatre School. There, Lloyd met Sanford Meisner, the legendary acting teacher with a strict method that forced actors to live truthfully in every imagined moment. Lloyd trained to the point of exhaustion sometimes, over 12 hours a day with grueling exercises. Once he had to repeat a single line with a partner for 2 straight hours until emotions erupted and a true connection emerged. That experience changed Lloyd's entire view of acting. From then on, he understood theatre was not about pretending, but about living truthfully in another world. The 1960s saw Lloyd hustling endlessly on small stages, acting while doing odd jobs to survive, from taxi driving to various side work. The breakthrough came in 1961, when he landed a role in And They Put Handcuffs on the Flowers, a shocking experimental play. Lloyd even had to hang himself upside down on stage to deliver a dramatic monologue showcasing a rare level of devotion. By 1969, he officially debuted on Broadway in Red, White and Maddox, a biting political satire. Though the play didn't last long, Lloyd's ability to transform into multiple roles caught critics' attention, raising him from an unknown actor to a promising figure on America's stage. The major turning point in Christopher Lloyd's career came in 1975, when he appeared in the masterpiece One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. In the film, Lloyd played Tabor, a patient in a mental institution. The movie not only became a box office earthquake, but also swept 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. At 37, a rather late age for a big screen debut, Lloyd still captured attention thanks to his ability to breathe life into complex, eccentric, yet profound characters, something that later became his career trademark. That success opened a new door. Lloyd quickly entered television, and just 3 years later, he made America laugh with his career-defining role, Reverend Jim Ignatowski, in the series Taxi, 1978 to 1983. Jim was a hippie who had drifted into a chaotic world, looking dazed yet carrying an odd sense of humour. Lloyd turned the character into a comedy icon, with his goofy appearance, eccentric mannerisms, and the immortal catchphrase, "What does that mean?" Moving into the 1980s, Lloyd further cemented his place with major roles. In 1984, he made Star Trek fans shiver as the evil Klingon Commander Krug in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. A year later, he appeared in the mystery comedy Clue 1985, playing Professor Plum, a quirky character in a dazzling ensemble cast. Though Clue wasn't an immediate hit, it gradually became a cult classic praised for its clever script and Lloyd's charming performance. But 1985 was the fateful year Lloyd landed the role of Dr. Emmett Doc Brown in Back to the Future. Surprisingly, he nearly turned it down at first. When he first read the script, Lloyd didn't like it. He thought the character was too bizarre, too unfamiliar, and even tossed the script aside. But a meeting with director Robert Zemeckis changed everything. After hearing Zemeckis describe his bold vision for the film, Lloyd decided to give it a try. And from that initial hesitation, he created a Doc Brown who was crazy yet kind, eccentric yet brilliant. In 1988, Christopher Lloyd sent chills through Hollywood as Judge Doom in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the groundbreaking film that combined live action and animation in a way never seen before. With manic eyes, dramatic movements, and a voice shifting like a cartoon, Lloyd created a villain both grotesque and haunting. The movie not only grossed over $300 million worldwide, but also won 4 Oscars, proving one thing. Lloyd was not just Doc Brown, he was a master of transformation, capable of taking audiences from roaring laughter to shivering terror. Not stopping there in 1991, he once again made audiences laugh uproariously as Uncle Fester in The Addams Family. Under Lloyd's hands, Fester became a strange yet genuine figure, both foolish and lovable. The film triumphed at the box office, leading to the sequel Addams Family Values 1993, cementing Fester as a pop culture icon. Fans still mention this character at film conventions even today. By the late 1990s, Lloyd continued to prove the power of his voice by dubbing Rasputin in Anastasia 1997. This villain was both evil and tragic, so vivid it sent shivers through audiences. He also captivated children worldwide as the hacker in the educational series Cyber Chase 2002, turning math into an engaging game and earning an Emmy nomination. Even throughout the 1990s-2000s, Lloyd kept his creative fire alive, from Switchblade Sam in Dennis the Menace 1993, which had theatres bursting with laughter, to reprising Doc Brown's voice in the Back to the Future video game. Appearing in numerous TV shows and films, even playing himself in Man on the Moon. Lloyd proved one thing: he wasn't just beloved by audiences, but also respected by Hollywood as a remarkable artist. Christopher Lloyd's private life was no less dramatic than the movies he starred in. His first marriage to Catherine Dallas Dixon Boyd began in 1959 when he was only 21, lasting 12 years while Lloyd was still struggling to find his place on stage. But their 1971 divorce was not the end. 3 decades later, Catherine unexpectedly sued Lloyd for $1, $2 million in unpaid alimony, thrusting his private life into the spotlight, just as his career was shining with Taxi and Back to the Future. In 1974, Lloyd entered his second marriage with actress Kay Tornborg. This was the period when his career was taking off with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest 1975. Although both were actors, they chose to keep their work separate, a rare thing in Hollywood. After 13 years, they parted ways in 1987, right as Lloyd reached the peak of fame. A year later, he married Carol Ann Vanek. But the marriage lasted only 3 years, serving as proof of how difficult it was to keep love steady under the weight of stardom. His fourth marriage with screenwriter Jane Walker Wood, 1992-2005, lasted 13 years, and even saw moments where career and private life intertwined when Jane wrote the screenplay for Camp Nowhere 1994 with Lloyd in the lead role. But after their split, tragedy struck, the 2008 wildfire burned down his $1 million Montecito home, the very symbol of a whole chapter in his life. After that, Lloyd met Lisa Loiacono, a real estate agent who became his fifth wife. Remarkably, in 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Lloyd, Lisa, his ex-wife Jane and Jane's new husband, all quarantined together under one roof, a bizarre situation, yet one that reflected their extraordinary bond. However, behind the glory of his career, Lloyd still struggled financially. In 2010, he was forced to file for bankruptcy after costly divorces and years of spending beyond his income. Once again, his life proved that beyond the limelight, shadows always lingered. In 2008, tragedy struck again. Christopher Lloyd's home in California was destroyed in a fire. He struggled to rebuild, but when he sold it during the economic recession, he took another financial hit. Yet Lloyd did not collapse. He kept working relentlessly on both television and film, steadily keeping his career alive, and his finances gradually stabilized. But Lloyd was not only about the spotlight. He also devoted himself to the community, from founding the Great Dixter Foundation to preserve historic gardens and promote biodiversity, to supporting scholarships for nurses and veterinarians, or donating to disaster relief efforts such as Hurricane Katrina and the Indonesian tsunami. Lloyd proved that compassion too was part of his legacy. Behind the glory of Doc Brown or Judge Doom, there are countless lesser-known but equally brilliant roles. In Camp Nowhere 1994, he transformed into an eccentric helping kids build a fake summer camp, turning a silly script into delightful comedy. His debut in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1975, though small, displayed his unique acting style and contributed to the weight of the legendary film. He continued exploring independent films like The Boat Builder, 2015, and I Am Not a Serial Killer, 2016, delivering characters full of inner depth, dark yet haunting. He didn't stop there. Lloyd also proved his versatility in voice acting, from the menacing Rasputin in Anastasia 1997 to the witty hacker in Cyberchase. Even in smaller projects like 20 Bucks 1993 or Senior Moment 2021, one can find a Christopher Lloyd constantly challenging himself cleverly, weaving humour with sincerity. Trained as a stage actor at the Playhouse and Yale Repertory, Lloyd always preserved the spirit of a pure artist. That is the true secret that kept him from ever being trapped in one role, making him an unexpected transformative icon, one who always leaves audiences curious and in awe. In 2021, at the age of 82, Christopher Lloyd still astonished the theatre world. He took on the role of King Lear, one of Shakespeare's most demanding and brutal challenges. Critics called it a bold move, since very few actors at that age dared to carry such a heavy, tempestuous role. But Lloyd had never chosen the easy path. Before that, he had delved into the works of Chekhov, Brecht, and even embodied Old Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. Even as a film legend, he surprisingly appeared at a rehearsal of the Back to the Future musical on Broadway, as if theatre had never left his blood. What makes Lloyd different is not only the range of his roles, but also the acting philosophy he has pursued his entire life. He was deeply influenced by Sanford Meisner, who believed acting meant living truthfully in imaginary circumstances, reacting in the moment instead of being locked into rigid calculations. For Lloyd, this was the key to creating soulful performances, where emotions erupt not because they are arranged, but because they are real. When inhabiting a role, he didn't just memorize lines. He stepped entirely into the world of the character. He observed everyday life, drew from personal memories, and infused those fragments into his performances. For instance, in his role as Reverend Jim in Taxi, Lloyd drew inspiration from eccentrics he had met in real life, turning them into a character at once bizarre and strangely relatable. One of Meisner's exercises that left the deepest impression on Lloyd was the repetition drill. Through it, actors are forced to listen to react authentically and to open themselves to surprises. Lloyd believed that this very surprise was the birthplace of true artistry. To him, acting was not pretending, but living, breathing, and feeling with the character. That is why every Christopher Lloyd performance, big or small, has always left an unmistakable mark. Today, Christopher Lloyd continues to prove he has never truly retired from the stage lights. At nearly 90, his appearance has visibly aged thinning silver hair, a frailer frame, yet his spirit shines bright. He continues to take part in films, and in 2020 was even nominated for an Emmy for his guest role in the series Hacks, showing that not only has he kept his craft alive, but he is also celebrated in his twilight years.